Hey, Krisserin.
Hi, Kelton.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, why not? I'm great.
Awesome. I love to hear it.
I'm Krisserin Canary.
And I'm Kelton Wright.
Follow our quest to publish our first
From
novels
first drafts to query letters
through inevitable rejections
and hopefully eventual success
from
to
California.
Colorado. This is Pen Pals.
How was your week?
It was okay. I mean, it was a good week in terms of being a person alive in my small life, but not a great week in novel writing. And they can be independent of one another. I can fail at all of my goals and still have a nice week.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're feeling good about it. What happened with your novel writing this week? I didn't do any writing this week because I have no writing to do. So I want to hear about what happened.
Well, as our listeners know, I lost a job the other week, and so I have been attempting to make that up. But in the meantime, Ben was also offered a carpentry job in town, and so because we need money, he had to take it. But that means I have the baby all day, and during his naps, I have to do the work that I'm still being paid to do instead of novel writing. So unfortunately, I just did not get to work on the novel at all. But some weeks are like that. What are you going to do? I feel a little, I feel like there's some promise in the week ahead, but we'll see.
If I remember correctly, you were going to use the first nap for work and the second nap for writing, but that didn't work.
Didn't
So,
work. Well, thankfully, one of my clients was like, I actually have a huge project for you in addition
oh
to
my
what you
God,
normally do.
great.
So she took over all naps. I think this is just kind of a reality of writing is like, not everybody has the luxury to just write whenever they want. It's like a lot of us are still in that phase of life where you have commitments that you have to do. And the writing unfortunately has to come second. And I know all the stuff about pay yourself first, etc., but I have to literally pay myself first in order to do that with writing. So yeah, no novel this week, but I did make some extra cash. Ben is making some extra cash, so we are afloat, and we look toward the horizon.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like we're both kind of in this weird space right now where we're trying to figure out how to make things work and what to do next. And that's very common for writers to be in these kind of like
Mhm.
weird in between spaces. We can't be grinding all the time, we can't be constantly productive, but it doesn't feel good because I think. I don't know how your mind works, but I'll speak for, maybe I know a little bit how your mind works, but I'll speak for my mind. I feel like I have to constantly be doing. I have to
Mhm.
constantly be making and producing. And that goes for all areas of my life. My mother is constantly lecturing me about how she's like, you're like a hummingbird. You just burn so bright and then you crash. And literally, not yesterday, because I drank way too much coffee yesterday, but the night before, I picked my kids up from school. I got home at 2:30 and I slept from 3 to 6. I just passed out. And then I went to bed at 10:30 and slept another 8 hours. I was just so tired.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm also, I have a new job, so I'm working. Like I worked until 9:30 last night because I get up and I take the kids to school and then I work and then I pick them up and then I bring them back and then I get them situated, do their homework. I went to open house and I come back and I work. And so I'm just like constantly
Yeah.
filling my day, which is easy to do when you have kids. It's like finding things to clean and homework that needs to be done and boobs that need to be stuck in babies' mouths and things like that. So
So I didn't accomplish any of my goals because of all the things you listed. Did you accomplish any of yours?
I did. I mean, not that my goals were really that hard. I went to the library and I pulled my comps and I have them to share. I have
Oh,
them right here, a little prop.
exciting.
So I have to admit, and I know we're going to have a whole conversation about AI next week because it has come to the point where it's time. We've had enough run-ins with the devil that we have to face him down. So I did use AI to come up with some ideas for comps for my novel, and I got 10 5 that were a little bit more focused on, I would say, themes about multi-generational families and women's stories. And then I asked AI to look at some more modern and contemporary examples that included technology, and it's spat out a couple recent ones. So the first one is The Guest by Emma Cline. Stop me if you've read any of these. I haven't read any of Emma Cline's books, but they're always on Book Talk as recommendations. This one was published, I believe, in the last couple of years, 2023, so 2 years ago. So this is the first one, and I think that there's some themes of alcoholism and other things in here that'll be relevant to my book. Luster by Raven Lalani, which is the one I'm actually most excited about. This was published in 2020. It's a shorter novel, and yeah, I don't know. I don't really know much about what these books are about, so I'm kind of letting myself be surprised. And then the last one, actually, I have read, and I didn't finish it, but I really enjoyed it. It's Big Swiss by Jen Began. And this novel is kind of nutty. Have you read this?
No, I've never even heard of it.
Oh, this is another Book Talk recommended book that I had on my TBR and came through Libby, and it is a hoot, to use your terminology. So I will finish reading it. It's really fun to read. It definitely has some themes of modern technology, and there's a character named Sabine in the book, so you can't hate it, right? Because it's my daughter's name. Yeah. So I will report back once I've dug into these a little bit, but I'm excited to have some books to compare, my story to, and I'll let you know when I
can't wait.
I got these on like Monday, and they've just been sitting in my room waiting for me.
It's a beautiful stack of books. Those
Oh
are
yeah, the
3,
covers are
like,
lovely.
that's all we're talking about today is
Yeah,
books. We're talking
books.
about what we're reading, what we have read, what we're not reading, what we hated, when we read, how we read, why we read. I think everyone knows not why we read, but but we're talking reading because that is like the core of writing, is like you kind of got to be a reader. I don't believe authors who say they don't read. I don't trust them. Something fishy.
I think it has to do with, we talked about this a little bit, about being afraid to do the research and comparing yourself to what's out there. But I think that has a lot to do with, okay, well, if I read something and it's fantastic, it's going to make me feel small and like I'll never be able to accomplish anything. But I also find that sometimes I read stuff and I'm like, this is trash. If this can get published, I can get published.
Yes. I mean, that is it's such a nice moment in a book when you're like, I could do it. I could do it. But lately, I feel like I've been reading pretty good books. I have a few DNFs on my list for this year, but I thought we would start by just talking about our reading habits. When we read, like how we fit it in, if we're religious about it. For me, I go through spells, and I can see that I like ebb and flow. There are patterns. There are some months when I read like 10 books, and there are some where I don't read any. And I have been tracking since 2020 the books I read every year. So I have a note in my phone where I just write down the title. If I didn't finish it, I say how much I finished. So I'll say like DNF at 50%. And then I'll give a brief synopsis of what I thought of it. I guess it's not a synopsis, but I'll give a brief, like, this is why I liked it or didn't like it, or if I'd read this author again.
I had a blog back in the day, and it was on Blogger, and I used to maintain, and I'm sure it's maybe, I don't know what happened to Blogger. I know Google acquired it and maybe it went into the ether, but I used to have these sections on the blog where I would put all the books I read that year. But in recent years, I have a spreadsheet that I keep. And I used to rate the books, like I had a very specific way that I would rate them, but now usually what I'll do is near the end of the years, I'll download from Libby, from Kindle, and from my library sources the books that I read and dump them in a spreadsheet just so I can see how many books I read and what categories they were, and I keep track of who the authors were and when I completed them, so I can like look at the metrics of how many books I've been reading. But yeah, I'm not proud of this reading list that I've acquired. Well, because I also started in 2020, and maybe that's because it was the pandemic and we were all just sitting at home reading all the time. And so it seemed like something to do.
Yeah.
A lot of the reading that I've done in the last 4 years, and we're talking 100 plus books a year, was romance and romantasy and fantasy and really light reading, things that I could just escape
Mhm.
into. And actually, I believe, yeah, it was last year. It was definitely last year's New Year's resolution. I said I wanted to read more serious fiction. Didn't really
Yeah.
happen.
I mean, who gives a shit?
I care. We talked about this. I feel like we should every once in a while. It's like eating your vegetables. Like you can't have cake
Is
every
it?
day.
Why?
Yeah,
Books are entertainment.
they're also education,
Oh, yeah, but
right?
I'm reading different books for education than fiction.
Sure. Well, you read nonfiction. I don't really read nonfiction
Well, those are your
at all.
vegetables, okay? So,
No, I don't think so because here's the thing. I'll listen to nonfiction. Like right now, I'm listening to, I think it's Hank Green, his book about tuberculosis. Have you heard of this book?
mm, no.
I'm
But
listening
I'm
to it
very familiar
only,
with the Green brothers.
but I do feel, I was an English literature major, and also, my teacher, Mark Sarvis, would very much lecture us on the need to read like a writer and to read books that are going to help us become better writers. And like I said, we've talked about this. I do think that slipping some nutrition, some nutritious reading into your diet every once in a while is probably a good thing, but it does feel like homework. It does feel like work. And sometimes, it's difficult to want to do that. I have actually started a couple of books like The Bee Sting by Paul Murray I was reading, and it's actually really well written. It's a beautiful book and it was nominated for awards, but then I didn't finish it because I was like, okay, cool. I'm done with this.
Well, I majored in advertising and then sold products like Triscuit and Jello. So that's what my reading list is also going to look like. Should we talk about some books? I wanted to bring up a question that Anne Helen Peterson asked on Culture Study. If you don't subscribe to Culture Study on Substack, you really should. It's amazing. She interviews authors all the time. But she asked this question: what are your 3 most formative books? And this question really stopped me in my tracks because I was like, oh, formative. Like, formed my opinions on writing, formed how I read, formed what I read, formed when I read. I was just like, I could not stop thinking about this. So I'm really curious your approach to this question and what your books were.
Yeah, I feel like when you fill out a good reads profile, they ask you like, what are your favorite books? And you have your top 5 in there. So I was thinking about the books that I've had in there, but I read them so long ago. So I don't even know if I would consider them like my most formative books. Maybe the first book that I really just devoured and stayed up late reading and cried when it was over, when I finished the series and I was going to miss the characters, were Louisa May Alcott's books, Little Women, Little Men, Joe's Boys. I really loved those stories, and I read them in middle school, I want to say. And then in college, I specialized in Victorian novels. So a lot of the formative reading that I did in college were, that like Middlemarch and those types of books. Jane Eyre is definitely a favorite of mine. I love that book. I love all the Bronte sisters. I've read all of their novels. There's something really moody and moving about those books. I don't reread books often, but I will reread Jane Eyre. And all of the books that I'm mentioning, I have and would reread. David Copperfield by Dickens is another one of my, I would say, most formative books. And I realized reading these books, Jane Eyre is not a brick, but a lot of Victorian novels are these like 4-part big honker books.
Mm-hmm.
I really love stories that are just womb to tomb. Like, I want to live in this time and I want to know how this person was born, and I want to see everything they went through in their entire life until they die. Those are the types of stories that I love. And then last, I would say Richard Yates' Easter Parade. And Richard Yates is actually most well known for Revolutionary Road, which is a great book, but I really enjoyed Easter Parade, and there's something about the dynamic of the family in that novel, which it's a little messy and it's really emotionally true and haunting, that made me feel like I could write things that were a little bit ugly and a little bit more vulnerable and honest. And then, in terms of fantasy, the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin is a favorite of mine. I love her in general, but those books really touched me. So, yeah. What about you, Kelton? What are your formative books?
We're going down a very different path here. Number one, True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by Avi. Avi is like a classic children's book writer, and True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle was about a girl who's a stowaway on a pirate ship. And obviously, as a child, I was like, well, this is my calling. This is what I should be doing. I should be at the high seas. I should be wielding a knife and climbing sails. And I loved that book because I felt like at the time, so many books were about boys. And when it was about girls, it was about, they had adventures, like I read Anne of Green Gables and all that stuff, but nobody was getting into violence. Nobody was in like real trouble. And I wanted real trouble. And Avi gave me that. And so I loved that book. Secondary childhood favorite was Boxcar Children because I dreamed about.
Wait. Before you move on to Boxcar Children, didn't you live that life? You went and lived on the high
Yeah.
seas.
Well, kind of. There was no violence involved. It was more of a
Was there
romance
not a
novel.
little bit of intrigue? A little bit of.
Oh yeah. I guess there was a lot of like crime. But it's like government crime. It was like tax evasion and like running from customs, But yeah,
To be clear, not Kelton. It wasn't Kelton doing these things. Moving on.
But yeah, Boxcar Kids too, just because they were living my dream of, running away and living alone and like taking care of yourself as a child. Somewhere in there, I read Persuasion by Jane Austen for the first time, which we'll get back to. But when I was in my early 20s, I read David Eagleman's Incognito: The Secret Lives of Brains. And that book really cracked open my foray into nonfiction. I don't know if that book holds up. I don't know if it would be as impactful to me if I read it now. I read it at least 15 years ago. But it changed how I thought about culture and religion and behavioral psychology, which ended up becoming a big portion of my career and still is. And so that book really ignited a path forward for me that I did not see. Sometime after that, I started reading Persuasion like once every 2 years. I still love that book. And then I would say in terms of like my fiction career that I am now pursuing, Martha Wells' All Systems Red is sort of what made me be like, yeah, I want to write fiction. That really, that whole Murderbot series spoke to me on such a deep level of like, it was fun, it was witty, it was dark, it was violent, and it was just, I loved it so much. Only made better by the fact that my nemesis at the time told me that Murderbot reminded them of me. And I was like, yes, it does. Murderbot is going to be a series now on Apple TV. Alexander Skarsgård is Murderbot, which I hate, but he's producing the series, which tells me that he read these books and saw himself in Murderbot. And I just can't hate anyone for identifying with that character because it's like I identify so deeply with that character that I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. I don't see Murderbot as a man, but
me neither. That's what I was about to say.
And
there's no way.
Ben read that whole series and was like, that's, if anything, it's a woman. If it has to be man or woman, it's a woman. But like in my mind, it's a character that is so gender fluid and like so not Alexander Skarsgård. I'm like, this is not the role for you. You can produce it. You don't have to star in it. But obviously he identifies with the character, and I saw the trailer and it looks amazing. So the rest of the cast looks really good. And so I'm very excited to see how they bring that to life. But I think those are my
Okay.
big bucks. Those are my big bucks.
I don't know if I see Eric the Vampire as
I know.
Murderbot. I also thought Murderbot was a woman, but I guess we need to, it's 2025, we got to step out of these gender norms. But, Ryan Gosling is going to be the main character. I forget the name of the main character in Project Hail Mary. He's producing that film.
Hmm.
So I guess if you have money and you want to tell stories on screen, you can do whatever the hell you want. But you recommended Martha Wells to me, I believe, and I loved those books too. And they're short, they're novellas, right? They're not super full-length novels, but Martha Wells does such an incredible job of character development that you
Hmm.
don't really need a lot of story because you just want to follow Murderbot around and see what happens.
Yeah, it's so. If you have not read this series and you're into sci-fi, 10 out of 10. One of my favorite sci-fi series of all times.
Yeah, I don't know. Is Alexander Skarsgård going to play Murderbot a little bit like, was it Marvin the paranoid android from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? This like gloomy, robotic type of cyborg.
No, no, you
Okay,
should
good.
watch the trailer. It's fun. It looks fun.
Are you a book movie person? Do you watch movies that have been adapted from books often? Because I'm not one of those people. I don't like them.
I don't know. Uh, I mean, uh,
I mean, that's the dream, right? Is like you write a book and it is
yeah.
so well that Hollywood comes calling and wants to make you a multimillionaire. But
I
I've
feel like
very rarely.
the reality is that most of the things I like are end up as TV shows and not
Mm,
movies.
mm,
Um, but also most of the books they turn into movies seem like in the past have seemed like dramas. That seems to be a common through line of like short stories and novels that are adapted to movies were dramas.
mhm.
That has, and then like comic books were adapted to
Sure.
movies.
Hmm.
But I'll see it if I love it. I loved lessons in chemistry, and then I saw the trailer and was like, nope, don't need to see it.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
it's
it's
also
silly.
like
It's
the
sort of like, do
casting
you
makes a
think
huge
yes, the
difference.
casting made a huge difference. And you know what? Part of the casting in lessons in chemistry, I was like, nope.
The
The
dog.
dog. The dog. It was like I just don't understand. Like, there's such a clear description of this dog in that book. And then they're like, what if we didn't do that? What if we just had a totally different dog? And it's like, why would you do that? It's not like, well, they're a much better act. Maybe they were a much better actor, but I'm like, you can't mess up the dog.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Pass.
listen, they cast an incredible cast for Pachinko, which is one of my favorite books of recent times. Lee Min-ho, who was the first actor in K-dramas that I saw and became obsessed with, and I still didn't watch that show. So
Well,
I'm just not a
Netflix,
big watcher, I guess. I don't watch a lot
yeah,
of movies.
Netflix made that adaptation of Persuasion with Dakota Johnson, and I saw the trailer for that and was like, no.
No.
I want Pride and Prejudice 2005 if you're going to make Persuasion, okay? I want
Ugh.
it true to the novel.
I think Emma's a good novel for like a quirky adaptation. They've done a lot of really good
Sure.
adaptations
Oh,
of that book.
if you go full quirk, if you do something different, like if we're talking like Clueless level, sure.
Sure.
The answer to your question is, will I blindly watch a movie or TV show because I read the book? No. I will watch the trailer and then decide if I want to engage with that as an independent form of media.
Fair enough. I mean, for me, it has to be Emma Thompson writing the screenplay for Sense and Sensibility with Ang Lee directing level good for me to want
Hmm.
to watch it.
Hmm.
And that is the pinnacle of adaptations for me. I can watch that movie over and over and over again. But it doesn't get any better than Hugh Grant, Kate Winslet, Alan Rickman. Get out of here.
Yeah, perfect cast.
Perfect. Beautiful
On the
music.
opposite end of perfect, do you have any books you hated?
Yeah, like a ton of books. But, and you know what? They're all the books that people read for book clubs that are
Hmm.
Oprah's book club pick or Reese's book club pick, like Celeste Ng's Little Fires Everywhere. Like books like that. I'm sorry if anyone listening liked that book, but I I really hate the, which is unfortunate for me, for someone who wants to be a published author. But I really hate these contemporary book club pick books that are out there. Like I read Silent Patient, hated it. Remember that SNL skit? Hated that. Girl on a Train, Gone Girl, all that shit. Like, get it out of here. I don't want to read that stuff. I don't like it. No.
I mean, I listen, it's not like I'm reading those books most of the time, so what am I gonna say? Gone Girl,
I,
though, I'm surprised you didn't like. I thought Gone Girl was like, readable.
it's cheap thrills. It's maybe I'm definitely generalizing and I'm just being a hater, which is what I love to do, but it's cheap thrills. It's not trusting the reader. It's, like twists that you can see from a mile away that aren't surprising. And they just make me mad. They make me
Wow.
angry. And
Wow.
I can tell that I'm not going to like a book by the fucking cover. I can tell if it's like if the font is some kind of like, edgy font and an eyeball looking through a peephole or, you know, a dark like red and blue or whatever. Like you guys know what I'm talking about. It's not for me. It's not for me. Mm-mm.
Well, you know what you like. I mean, I can tell by the blurbs on the back of the cover if I'm going to like the book or not. When the blurb is like, I felt this in my bones. I've never been the same. It left me like an open wound on the end of a dirt road. I'm like, nope, not for this girl. Good luck getting fixed up. Happy to tell you about the books that I hate,
Yeah,
which you
let's hear the
you will
books you
not be
hate.
surprised to hear are all by men. And it turns out I don't know, looking at this list, if I actually hated these books or if I hated spending time with these characters. Actually, I can
Hmm.
tell you for sure, it's the latter. I
Okay.
hated these characters so deeply that it left me hating these books with a passion. Number one, Into the Wild by John Krakauer. I fucking hated that guy.
Oh, yeah, that's the guy
Who
who like
dies
went
in the
off and
bus?
died in the, yeah, for no fucking
You
reason.
fucking moron. You self-centered, like self-important, unprepared. I know this was a real guy with a family. He was a fucking moron. I hated reading that book. I was like, how ill prepared could a person be? I just hated it. Hated it. John Krakauer, great writer. Hated that
Well,
book.
so I don't know about what your algorithm serves you, but for some reason, my TikTok algorithm has decided I want to watch videos of men on Mount Everest, like dying. So I get a lot of
Weird.
that. Yeah, I don't know. But maybe it's like a morbid fascination of mine that I subconsciously want to engage with because I do watch the videos. But it's the same. I look at these men, I'm like, you guys are fucking idiots. What are you doing? Go home. Stop polluting Mount Everest. You have families waiting for you. If you die, you deserve it. This is dumb. And all the comments are like, the best thing about this is that you don't have to do it. They spend all this money to go and do what? To do what? Why? It's just, I don't know. It's this,
Yeah.
maybe it's like a man thing that we just don't get.
I mean, I understand first ascents, first descents, incredible moments in climbing that haven't been done before, trying to do things without oxygen, like pushing the human form. But lining up for the Disney World hike of Everest, what do you, come on. Like, you're that I don't understand that. True athleticism, real alpinism, absolutely, I think it is incredible, and it is so sad how many people die doing that. Like now I live somewhere where I know those people, but the line for Everest, the cost to climb it when you're just when you're not dedicating your life to that type of athleticism, when you're just doing it to be like, I climbed it. It's like, to me, that is the equivalent of Katy Perry in space. Like, you should be embarrassed.
And now it's all for the gram, you know? It's gotten even worse because people are doing it to document it so they can put it on TikTok and all of that. I know. It's
All right. Well,
horrible.
speaking of other men I don't like, Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah. Oh, so that was my like mainstay book where if I always said that if you talk to it, if you're, and I haven't dated because I've been married for almost 20 years, but if you talk to a guy and their favorite book is Catcher in the Rye, it means that they haven't read anything since high school.
I mean, it's also Holden Caulfield is he's just a little twerp.
It's a shit.
He's
Yeah.
just a fucking twerp. And when men said that was their favorite book, I was like, oh, are you a little baby? Are you a little baby that doesn't feel like anybody takes you seriously? Are you having a hard time in the real world? Fuck off. God, I hated that book.
I did read
And
that book really fast though. And that was I think that's one of the first books that I just like read in a day,
well,
you
again,
know?
unfortunately, J.D. Salinger, incredible writer, hated the book.
Hmm.
And then the last in this category for me is Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. I can't spend time with that character. Hey, can't stand him. Can't stand him. The only woman who gets a notable mention on this list for me is Suzanne Collins. Is that her name? Hunger Games?
Oh, you don't like Hunger Games?
Well, when Katniss ended up with PETA, I was like, she doesn't like him. I was like, I didn't realize this book was like just another way to be like a dutiful woman. That's what that book ends on, is Katniss just
Yeah.
being a dutiful woman. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's not what I came for. I came for the bows and arrows and the badass. And now she's just doing the right thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, get the fuck out of my library.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Ugh. Okay.
You reminded me of a couple of books that I actually like. One book that I hate with a passion is The Road by Cormac McCarthy.
Oh, I've never read it, but obviously I know
Oh,
it.
I actually listened to it. I used to commute, oh God, like 80 miles a day earlier on in my career. And then later in my career, I did it again. I commuted from Covina to Santa Monica. So it's a 40-mile one-way drive. So I was listening to it in the car on a CD. This is how long ago it was that I had rented from the library. And I remember, like, you listen to this, I was listening, or you read the book, and like all these horrific things happen, like trigger warning if if you don't like really like gross descriptions of things, but they eat a fetus in that book. Like a woman, there's no food, there's no sunlight. It is just horrific apocalyptic writing,
Hmm.
right? So the whole time you're listening to this little boy and his father trying to make it to California, trying to make it to the West Coast. And I'm literally like, I had gotten off the freeway and I pulled into like, I was at the beach. So here I am having completed the same sojourn that these two characters had completed. And it just fucking ends. There's no why to that book. So he just wrote this horrific novel with violence and pain and misery, and there was no reason for it. There's no ending, there's no lesson, there's nothing to take away from it but the continuation of the misery that you just spent however many hundreds of pages of reading. And I was screaming in the car. I was so mad. I was like, you gotta fucking kidding me. I was so angry. I hate that shit. And only a man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to our male listeners if we have any. But
Yeah.
honestly, it's like the fucking hubris of a man to be like, yeah, that's how it ends. Like I'm giving the reader nothing. Fuck you, Cormac McCarthy. And men,
Uh,
this is like another thing. It's like men who say like Cormac McCarthy is like one of their favorite writers. Big
yeah,
red
I
flag.
mean, men who say Charles Bukowski, I'm like, I think
Yeah,
Bukowski's a great
Bukowski's another
writer,
one.
but it's
Yeah.
like if you list him as like number one for you, I'm like,
Yikes.
you're gonna dine and ditch this establishment, so
Yeah.
no thank you.
I was thinking like you're not long for this world. Lord. Oh,
All
and
right,
then
we need to
Chuck
talk about.
Palahniuk. I mean, we could just
Oh
keep
gosh.
going. Chuck
I mean,
Palahniuk.
listen, we could have a whole episode of like red flags on a man's bookshelf. I
Oh
even
my
really
God.
liked Chuck Palahniuk's book that was about like writing itself. I thought it was really
Mm.
interesting and good and well written. It's more about the fact that like it's like men who like him. You're like, oh God, oh no.
I don't know. Have you read his short story Guts?
Yes, I have.
I had a
Yeah, well,
teacher tell us to read it, and I was like, again, the needless, grotesque violence. That's the kind of stuff that I just don't have. Never had the heart for, and I still don't. And so, yeah, I think with like Murder Bot Diaries, there's violence in that book. I'm okay with reading about violence, but it has to serve a purpose. It can't just
yeah,
be needless pain and suffering. I don't want to
yeah,
read about that. We have enough of that in this world that I don't need to read about it, you know?
yeah, yeah, same, same.
Kelton, what books have you read this year? How many? What were they?
I have read probably 6 or 7 books in completion, and I DNF'd 3 books. I DNF'd a rom com that just wasn't speaking to me. I DNF'd North Woods by Daniel Mason because you shouldn't try to read that book while you have a small baby.
Hmm.
You shouldn't. I don't even know if you can read that book while you have a small child. Like,
Hmm.
save that. It's good. It's really good. But I was like, I can't read this right now. And then I DNF'd a book in a class because I was like, I don't want to drag the author. It just wasn't for me. But things I have read this year that I've really liked. A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. That book I didn't like in the beginning. And then the climax, the execution of the climax was so good that I was like, you got me. And then, of course, her acknowledgments at the end made me love it. It was so interesting that it just like it flicked a switch for me where I was like, no, I love this book. I loved it. It was great.
This was the book you read last week that you were like, I'm not going to talk about it. I don't like it, right?
Uh-huh. And then and then I didn't love the style. It's person present tense, which I just have a really hard time reading. And but it won me over. It won me over. I really liked it. And then I'm also reading, it's funny, I read A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, and then I'm reading Life Would Be Perfect if I Lived in That House by Megan Daum. So both books about houses. Um, Life Would Be Perfect If I Lived in That House is sort of old now. I think it's from 2010. It's either 2010 or 2015. I mean, there's moments that are a little aged in the book, but it's the first memoir I've read in a really long time. And since it was especially about homes and architecture and places that we live, that really spoke to me.
Mm.
And she and I have I'm only halfway through the book, and she and I have already shared 2 places that we've lived. So I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting this. And that has been charming. So I'm trying to read a little more memoir right now. It's, because my essays are essentially memoir. And so as we talked about, like, you have to kind of write in your genre. I was like, what? Or read in your genre. I was like, well, I'm not doing that for the newsletter. So I need to kind of expand what I'm reading. One other kind of memoir I read this year was Cougars on the Cliff by David E. Johnson and Maurice G. Hornacher. And this is because my mom and I had a book exchange where it was like, you have to read this book. Fine, you have to read that book. More of like a book challenge, if you will. But she was a wildlife biologist in her career, and in her early career was tracking cougars in the wilderness. And so this book, Cougars on the Cliff, was emblematic of her experience, and she knew some of these people in the book. So it was really interesting to read about, like, tangentially her work. And then
What?
a book I
Hold on.
do.
What a badass. Your parents both had really cool
Yeah, they have cool
jobs.
careers.
There was
Yeah,
no
they
way that
did.
you weren't going to end up in like a cabin in the middle of nowhere living
I know.
a
This
remarkable life.
destiny. Can you believe that I wanted to be a banker?
Yeah, because I know how money obsessed you
Yeah,
are.
I just wanted to make money. I was like, I'm gonna live in a penthouse in New York. I'm gonna be a banker.
If Kelton was
What
a
a
character in Harry Potter, she'd be in Gringotts.
yeah, it's It's true. I would graduate from Slytherin straight into Gringotts. And then a book I want to recommend, because it only took me an hour to read, and you can check it out on Hoopla, is Summer of Dead Birds by Ali Liebgott. I'm not totally sure how to pronounce her last name, but The Summer of Dead Birds is a verse novel. So it's kind of like poetry. It is poetry, but it reads like a novel. And it's a quick little PDF. And if I'm going to have someone like kind of gut me in a book, if I'm going to have to feel the feelings, I will take it in poetry and short form. And I thought that it was just like really beautiful. So it's not something I would normally recommend, but I'm going to. So The Summer of Dead Birds. And then I read some rom-coms. I read Margot's Got Money Troubles. And I have an expansive TBR list.
Mm.
But tell me, what have you read this year? And like, why are you reading it?
I literally, this year, have only read Robin Hobb because the books, the Realm of the Elderling series, are all 800 pages plus. So
How many books
this,
are there?
I think 16. I think
Okay, yeah, because I was
16.
like, babe, it's been 4 months.
Yeah. So I was looking at my 2024 list because I haven't actually pulled my 2025 list yet because I really haven't read a lot this year. I read three of the books last year. And I've read 10 total. I just last night finished the 10th book. And so I've read seven of them this year. And then in
Wow.
between, I've listened to some books. I listen to memoir. I really enjoy listening to memoir when it's read by the author. And I'll listen to those typically
Yeah.
either on Audible or Libby or Spotify. And the one that I listened to most recently was I'm Laughing Because I'm Crying by Young Me Mayer, who I actually think you would love her writing style because she's our age. She's your age. I think she's born the same year as you. And so she lived in San Francisco at the height of the 2010s millennial grunge era. And but I mean, her background's very unique in that she grew up in Korea and in the Marshall Islands. And then she moved to the United States when she was like 19 and lived in San Francisco. But her writing style is lyrical, very much like yours. She was told in high school that she should never write and she should never be a writer, but it was a thing that she excelled at. So she kind of held herself back from doing it for a really long time. But then she talks about her mother, and I think she her mother lived in Alaska for a period of time, and her dad was a pilot in Africa. Like she's got this crazy
Wow.
family background. And now you would know her because she's she goes viral on TikTok quite often. She's a comedian. She's really funny. And the book itself is just beautifully written and so interesting. It's such a good memoir. So and she reads it and she does a beautiful job reading it. So I highly recommend
Try
people who
that.
like memoir to read or listen to that book. But yeah, I've literally only been reading Robin Hobb. I am fascinated by authors who, especially fantasy authors, and not romantasy authors. It's a very different distinction because I feel like with a lot of romantasy, we are being dropped into a world so we can watch people fall in love. But fantasy is very much more about the world building and the politics. And not everything is fair. There's not always a happy ending for every character. Sometimes characters that we love die. And I think the ability to have that world in your head is so incredible. And it's something that I don't think I could ever do myself. So I just read it and marvel at how
Yeah.
incredible these writers are. So yeah, that's why I'm reading it. It's very much escapism. And again, there's something in me that loves understanding the womb to tomb of these characters, to see them born into a world that I understand, and then watch them traverse it and fall down and get back up again and become remarkable in their own right. So I guess that's what draws me to it. Even though it's not David Copperfield, it is a story on a huge scale. So
Yeah.
that's what I like to read. But then, I sprinkle in a little bit of romance here and there. And I did read some romantasy and just like rom-com at the end of last year that I really enjoyed. I read Long Live Evil, which was really, really fun. And I got really mad at the end because I don't read series that aren't complete. I hate reading a book and then finding out that the next book is not available to me. So I was a little bit frustrated
Rough.
by that. But this is a story about a woman who she has like a terminal illness and she falls into the series that she's been reading. She starts living in the world of these characters and
Mm,
changing the story because she knows the story and she
yeah,
knows what's supposed to happen. She starts trying to change things and
that's
she's
really
one of
fun.
the villains in the story too. It's really fun. So if you're looking for something fun to read, I definitely recommend that. And then M.L. Wang's Blood Over Brighthaven is a standalone fantasy novel that is so good. And there is a little bit of romance in it, and it's not, I don't remember, I don't want to spoil it, but the ending isn't a super happy ending, but it's fucking perfect. It is
Okay.
so, ugh, everyone should go read it. It's so good.
When you're done with Robin Hobb, how do you find what you're going to read next?
Mm, I don't want to think about being done with Robin Hobb's books.
Okay, whatever, but before Robin Hobb, how did you find what you were going to read next? How did you
Um,
even find Robin Hobb? Like, that's what I'm looking for. Like,
yes,
you
yes,
want to
yes,
read
yes, yes,
something. How do
yes.
you find your books?
Yes, yes, yes. So content discovery is definitely difficult. I read Jacqueline Carey's, I love Jacqueline Carey's Cushill's Dart, that series. She had 6 books in that world. I went on Reddit and I was like, what to read after Jacqueline
Mhm.
Carey's books? And then Robin Hobb came up a lot. And there were a lot of other authors that came up a lot. And the thing about epic fantasy are that a lot of the books were published. I don't know if books besides, Sanderson, I don't know if publishers are doing these like really long fantasy series anymore. So a lot of the books were published like 20 years ago. So that dates them a little bit. That's the hard thing. Have you ever tried to read old sci-fi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, ugh, this is very dated. Like it feels like you can feel the writers that pulled inspiration from the book, but you know that you're a little bit beyond it and it doesn't feel
Yeah.
good reading it.
Yeah.
So that's how I do it. Is I try to triangulate based on the writers that I really love, other writers that are recommended, and then I give it a read. And if I'm not feeling it in the first 100 pages, I drop it. But yeah, and there's also like the mainstays. I read Mistborn, then I
Yeah.
started reading the second book. And here's the thing: doesn't matter how good it is, he's still a book written by a man.
I liked Sanderson's Mistborn series, but I hear you. I like that you're using Reddit to find books. I do recommend people use Reddit when they're looking for books. I recommend Reddit for if you're looking for anything at this point.
Mhm.
It is my late night safe haven when I'm looking at the interior design subreddits or the Boston Terrier subreddits. But when I'm looking for new books now, if it's not Reddit or just like Googling, like, what's good in magical realism, I'm getting most of my recommendations from other Substacks and then reading a lot of those Substacks books.
Mm.
So my TBR list has a bunch of people. These are all books I am like waiting to come into my library. But JT Ellison's A Very Bad Thing, Olivia Mentor's Such a Bad Influence. I'm reading right now Amy Marie Turner's Voyage of the Pleiades, I want to say
Mhm.
it's pronounced.
It is.
Um, Thank you. Thank you, my well read friend. So, now I'm kind of like, what's everybody writing? I read their other stuff. I read the short form. Let's go long. And then everybody, on those newsletters is constantly recommending things. So I'm picking things up a lot. I'm listening to a book called American Bulk, which is about like hoarding and consumerism that was recommended on Culture Study right now. So yeah, now I feel like I'm overwhelmed with recommendations. My TBR list, both waiting to come into the library and stacked in my kitchen, is like 40 books.
Yeah, it's like when do
I'm
you ever
overwhelmed.
have the time? When do you read typically?
I read when W3 is doing independent play. So I kind of get around a book with me when I'm solo parenting so that like whenever he's like fully distracted by something, I just dive right into the book. Um, I read a little bit at night, sometimes after he's asleep. It depends how tired I am. Um, but that's kind of it. It's like when I have him, it's when I have him. He's either asleep next to me or playing next to me. That's when I read right now. Because in
Fair
the
enough.
car, I don't listen to books, I listen to podcasts.
Yeah. I only listen to books when I don't have any podcasts to listen to. Like when I've kind of
Yeah.
listened through all of them, you know?
Thriving in your life than I do.
That's true. I do. I'm
I
in the
drive
car a lot.
like 2 or 3 times a week, maybe.
Ugh, jealous. Every day, multiple times a day. Yeah. Picking up the kids, dropping off the kids, taking the kids to activities. Well, yeah, I mean, I read at night. I typically will, like, I have to read before bed. And then I like to read in the morning. I like to start my morning with coffee and my book so I'm not just like diving into my phone. And otherwise, I will read when I have a moment where I don't have anything to do and I can relax. And on the weekends, I'll read quite a bit. So, yeah, I don't really watch TV at all anymore.
Wow.
At all. TV or movies. The only time I really watch things is like when I'm putting my makeup on or like getting ready for bed or whatever. I'll like put my phone there and like watch some stupid reality TV show. But or if I want to spend time with Boyan, like we're watching Top Chef right now. We'll go sit on the couch together. But
So
I
are
don't
we.
yeah, I just don't new episode today. I don't I don't think I have the like attention span to watch anything anymore. Isn't that horrible? Like I can sit and read fine, but if I'm like looking at the TV, I want my phone in my hands. It's really bad.
Oh
I don't like it.
man.
I
You're like who
know.
Netflix is targeting.
I know the second screen
Second
people.
screen. Ugh.
I was gonna say in terms
Well,
of finding books really quickly, is that I do find a lot of books on Book Talk, but I don't trust the recommendations very often because I don't know how much of that content is actually real anymore. You
how
know?
much isn't just SponCon? I have no idea. I'm only just starting to experiment with TikTok, as you
I
saw.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it did better
Uh,
on TikTok, right? The content that you
yeah, I
posted
mean,
of
for the listeners, I made a reel or a video. I made a video. I made a video that I posted on Instagram and then I made it into the exact same video for TikTok. I didn't download it from Instagram and upload it to TikTok. Like the video was created on Canva and then uploaded to both platforms. And it did so much better on TikTok where I have 50,000 followers on Instagram. None of them engage with anything because I'm shadow banned. And then on TikTok, I have 400 and it outperformed. And so I was like, well, what am I doing on Instagram? I've been trying to get out of jail on there for years and it's not working. It doesn't work. I got followed by way too many bots and like my account is dead. And so now I got to figure out how TikTok works. I find TikTok so overwhelming. It's like always making noise. It's like you can't go anywhere in the app where it's not just like yelling at you.
oh, we're old.
Yes, yes, I am old. I'm going to be 40 this year. I'm young. I'm a spring chicken. I look hot today, so whatever. TikTok, I'll figure it out. I will figure it out.
You will. I know you will. All right. Well, Kelton, we got to do better. I mean, I'm including myself. We got to do better this week. What are we going to do? What's our goal?
Sorry, my goal is to make money.
Okay.
Listen, I do this coming week. I have one promising meeting. A person like wants to hire me for something, and I just need to make sure that they can pay an amount that is decent. And if
Yeah.
that person says yes to that amount, then I can do some novel working. So, contingent. My goals
Okay.
are contingent.
Could you, when you go on a walk, could you do some like auditory exploration of your book? Could you work in
Yeah.
your novel
Yeah.
into that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. I can do it on the walks as long as it's not like sleeting this week. I can do some narrating.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. That's my assigned goal for you is if you go on a walk, try and work on the
Hmm.
novel. All right. Give me a goal because I know I'm at a loss. I'm just waiting right
Your
now for
goals are
my author
obvious.
to get back to me.
Yeah, read those books.
All of them? No, come on. You got to give me a
Yeah.
little bit more of a. Okay. That's not achievable.
Okay, read Luster because Luster's going to take you like a day and a half.
Yeah. Luster is
That's
227 pages.
fast.
Okay. Okay.
And then I want you to do Emma Klein. Is that her name? Emma Klein?
McLean.
Yeah, then read Emma
McLean's
Klein.
book is 289 pages or so.
I think you can read both those books this week. I've read 2 books this week. I have
Listen,
a
lady.
baby. I have a baby. You read those books. I'm saving Big Swiss because you've technically already read that one.
I didn't read
And
the whole thing. I didn't finish it. I read like 100 pages of it, but it was good.
okay,
But
well,
okay, but okay,
I
so here's the thing. I'm gonna read them for what? I need to like I got the comps. I'm gonna read them and for what? For what am I gonna get out of them besides enjoyment?
how to write query letter because you're gonna write your next query letter. Okay.
I
Listen,
don't
I'm
want to.
dragging you. We're
I
talking
don't want.
AI next week. I'm dragging you down. You are going to write that query letter and you're going to know what your comps are about.
All right, lady.
That's why you got
Okay.
comps, okay?
Okay. All right. Fine. Fine. All right. Fine. Okay. Fine. Next week we are gonna talk about AI. So
Yeah.
buckle up for that conversation.
Can't wait.
It'll be a doozy. And yeah, you know where to reach us. Email us at officialpenpalspod@gmail.com. Shoot us a note. We'd love to hear from you. You can follow us at penpalspod on TikTok and Instagram. You know, if that's your fancy. And yeah, have a great week. Happy writing.
Happy writing. Good luck. Bye.
Bye.